Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another one of our podcasts. This is Two Pilates Teachers on Mission, and I'm Philippa Botrill.
And I'm Philippa Butler.
And our mission this week is really the second half of Aging Gracefully, but with the focus a little bit more on the menopause. We felt last time that we didn't really talk enough about the menopause, and it's a humongous subject that I'm very passionate about, Pippa's very passionate about, and so we thought we'd talk a little bit more, probably a bit more from our personal experience, I think, this week. What do you think, Pippa? Does that sound good?
Yes, definitely, absolutely. I've got a lot of personal experience. How horrible this whole thing is. You know, you've been on this journey with me because really the worst of it has been over the last 5 years that I've been working with you. And so, you know, the stuff that I've had going on in my mind, my body, just every bit of me, now that on reflection, it's all been down to the symptoms of the menopause or approaching menopause. And so that's the perimenopausal period, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what you're saying, Pippa, is I've only known you as a menopausal grumpy woman. Is that right then? I've never known the real Pippa.
No, well, do you know what? Actually, I really feel like a different person than I used to do. And this is actually driven me to only this morning make a telephone call to my doctors.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
yeah.
Because the more I've looked into it, and it's partly because of you that I've been looking into it a little bit more, because of the things that we've talked about. But all the symptoms that I've had over the last 5 years, hot flushes, insomnia, memory. I keep saying because of my memory is so bad. You know, and every time I go to the doctor, all they want to do is offer me antidepressants. And that is because, that's because I have this history with mood disorders. And, but anybody who suffered loss, and I know you had a very sad episode recently, but anybody who suffered loss knows that, you know, your life is never quite the same again. And this is something that can plague you. And then, you know, all the stuff that happens to you in your life, why do I end up being pigeonholed as somebody who, anytime you go to the doctor with anything wrong with you at all, they want to prescribe you antidepressants? And even when they said, it's probably the perimenopause, but all we can give you is antidepressants, there is no evidence that antidepressants will work for mood disorders that are caused as a consequence of hormone shit. There's no evidence for that.
That's really bad, isn't it? And that's really interesting as well, because I suppose in some ways my experience has been almost the opposite, really, because, you know, I had all my gut issues going on and on and on and on. At the same time, I was going through the menopause. So every time I went to my GP, she would just say, menopause, have HRT, menopause, have HRT. And I'm like, I don't think it is just the menopause. I feel like something else is different. No, menopause. And so I felt pigeonholed because she's just looking at me, middle-aged woman going through the menopause. And that was all that she looked at, which is almost exactly the opposite to you, isn't it?
It's the same in reverse. Yeah. So I suppose the thing is that... The thing is that generally we know our own bodies, if we're in touch with our own bodies, and you know, that's something that we really harp on about, isn't it? This mind-body connection. If we can be in touch with what's going on. The problem is that, I mean, I've never experienced what it was like to be withdrawing from estrogen before. You know, it's like it's a new thing.
Withdrawing because you're so right, withdrawing from estrogen.
Yes,
it is. It's like, you know, well, clearly it's a drug, a chemical drug, isn't it? So, wow, I really like that saying, actually, because that's...
You know what, I came with that up just in that minute then, but exactly.
Genius.
Yeah, genius. Withdrawing from estrogen. I'm going to say that all the time now.
Yeah. I'm an addict. I'm on withdrawal. I can't help it.
Well, so, and anyway, the thing with the hormone as it's going, it's not just going like this. It goes like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we have that roller coaster.
Straight down.
Or straight down.
Straight down as mine did.
Did yours just go straight?
Mine went straight down because of the combination with the gut issues and whatever. So when I finally got tested, I had 0 estrogen, 0 progesterone, and 0 testosterone. Nothing.
Nothing.
It's no wonder I was like on the floor. There was just nothing there at all, you know. And all I could say was, "Oh, that's a little low. There's nothing there." I'm like, yeah, thanks for that. Now, how are you going to help me? You know.
Yeah. Well, so how are they going? How are they helping you? I suppose is the.
Well, I mean, I think mine is not quite the normal journey because I had these 2 things going on at the same time. So there's gut issues and the menopause. And the gut issues, after eventually insisting upon and actually having to pay for numerous tests myself, because every time I went to the GP, she would say, menopause, menopause, menopause. You don't red flag for anything else, you know. So I'm really sorry, but we can't help you. She even once said to me, actually, she said, I know there's something else going on, but I can't help you because you're not red flagging for anything.
Weird.
So anyway, I decided to take matters in my own hands and get some tests done myself, which basically showed up that I had parasites. Can't remember the name of them now.
I remember the look at them. You showed me the picture.
Oh, they're disgusting. I mean, it's quite a common form, actually. And considering all the travelling I've done, you know, quite easy for me to have picked it up in Nepal or, you know, actually, it's quite profound in America and places like that as well. So I could have picked it up anywhere. Probably, maybe even the UK, who knows? Nobody will ever know. But they sort of said the damage that it had done to my gut meant that I must have had it for quite a number of years. So I do wonder whether I had it, you know, when I went to Everest. But I can't actually remember.
So this is 2 menopausal women having a conversation. It's something like that joke, isn't it? No, you were talking about the parasites and the HRT. Well, I was asking you what they did for you, and you were saying that you ended up having to get treatment for the gut, really.
Yes, I had treatment for the gut, and I did a lot. So I did the GP thing with all the antibiotics, which made me so ill. But I also did the medicinal herbs as well with Jules, actually. And she really, really helped me to balance my gut, which was the first sort of process. But the side effect of the gut, and I'm sure some of you know this, was the fact that my bone health had deteriorated massively because I wasn't absorbing any of my nutrients, any of my vitamins. So that had affected my bone health. And again, the GP wasn't keen to start with to do a bone density test because, you know, no issues in the family, exercised all my life, blah, 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 blah. You're not really priority. But then when I got my results back, she did send me along. And I was osteopenia. So not quite osteoporosis, but getting there, which is really surprising for someone like me. It would be surprising if somebody like you did, because we have exercised all our lives, haven't we? So to cut a long story short, basically I have gone on to HRT for the bone health side of it. And the side effects of that, of course, is that it's improved the hot flushes and that side of thing. So that has been good. And I think it has taken away and minimized some of those menopausal symptoms. It's too early to know yet what effect it's having on, you know, my bone health, but it's better than some of the other things that they try to prescribe you for your bone health.
Yeah. Well, this is it, isn't it? I think the 3 things that not having enough estrogen in our bodies predisposes us for is 1, heart disease, 2, dementia,
big
and 3 osteoporosis.
Yeah.
So more women have dementia than men, and there is a link with the estrogen, the lack of estrogen in that, and the heart disease. I mean, that's huge. That's the biggest killer. So you know, when you start to think about it, I think the doctor that I really like listening to talk about this is Dr. Louise Newson, and she calls herself the menopause doctor or menopause doctor. And she talks about the fact that estrogen is a hormone that our bodies are used to having, and lots of cells in the body recognize it. And then when it becomes absent, those cells miss it. Hence, we get symptoms and illnesses and conditions. And she sort of said, you know, for a type 1 diabetic, it's the hormone insulin that is deficient. And you wouldn't think about not giving them insulin. Similarly, you know, if you're thyroid deficient, which I'm thyroid deficient as well, and so you replace, that's a hormone that you replace with thyroxine, and that's to maintain the levels in your body. You know, she was saying that in Victorian times, women were not living, they were living to be about 5 years, 2 or 3 years after the menopause. You know, they were not living that long. Now the average age lifespan of a woman is into the 80s. That's could be 30 years with no estrogen or little in the way. Oh,
I wasn't randomly waving at you. It's just like I buzzed past.
So she, you know, and when you start to think about it in these terms, this is something that your body does better with than it does without. As she also said, which made me smile, that a lot of the women in the asylums back in the Victorian times, probably it was just the menopause. I mean,
it was. How
seriously, I mean, Philip, I honestly feel like a different, crazier version of myself than you know, I mean, it's awful what it does to your mind.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes it's not spoken about as much, the effect it has on your mind. I mean, we often know the body symptoms, hot flushes and memory loss and, you know, grumpiness and all of those sorts of things, but it really does affect your mind, doesn't it? And I felt that it's almost like an overnight change. You know, 1 minute, and I think I was joking about this with last time, saying for me it was 53. You know, 1 minute I was happily sailing along, never thinking that the menopause would happen to me. You know, I'm too healthy and fit, I won't get the menopause, ha ha ha. You know, comes along and it's just like crashing over the edge of a cliff, really, because everything changes, everything. And it's almost like, I suppose because it's not talked about that much. You know, women are supposed to just deal with it and get on with it. We don't talk about it that much. So we're not really that well prepared, are we? And suddenly we're like,
no,
what is that?
I know. I mean, that's it. You're not prepared. We're not educated. And then there's all this sort of controversy around the HRT that arose. And that arose, this link with breast cancer arose out of a study that was done in America. And these are not my words. Dr. Newson reliably informed me that this was a very flawed study that took place, and that the results were reported through the media at a time when the doctors, apparently it was in the summertime, and the doctors were all on holiday, and I mean, you know, so they couldn't get hold of anyone to give a sort of reliable interpretation of these results, and it ended up being just a media storm, really. And so the people that were included in the study were obese, a lot of them. And so what, you know, the thing is, the risks of lifestyle factors obviously contribute to our increased risks of cancers, including breast cancer. Being obese is one of them. And so, you know, if you doing these scientific studies, they've got to be so rigorous in the way in which they do the studies, and then the results get misinterpreted. So the risk of breast cancer, you have to weigh it up if you drank. So she said, women offset the effects, or the effects, the feelings that the menopause brings, by drinking a couple of glasses of wine a day. Well, that's not exactly what you call healthy, is it? So
no, it isn't. And I don't think we should be made to feel that there's anything wrong with taking hormones, which we are just lacking. There's quite a big stigma, isn't there, attached to HRT, particularly I think if you're in the health and fitness industry, because you should be able to do it with natural supplements, your herbs and your essential oils, and that's what's promoted again and again, almost as if somehow you're failing if you go and have some hormone replacement therapy. So I do think that those attitudes have to change a bit. And I think it's better if people come out and say, yeah, I'm taking HRT, or I have been, or my mum has, or my aunt, or my sister, and just get it out there a bit more so that people actually can feel okay about the decision they're making. Because often we're not making informed choices. You're making that choice, like you said, on the media, who's going, oh, breast cancer risk, scaremongering, or on your GP, which basically says, well, have a pill. And so you're stuck, aren't you? Almost between a rock and a hard place.
We are stuck. And I mean, the thing is, your GP was saying, have HRT. None of the ones I saw were, not one of them. And actually, all the troubles I was having with periods, the P word, all the troubles I was having with that, and still all they could come up with was antidepressants. And the one actually said to me, oh, you have to stop your periods before you can have HRT. And you're like, and so actually the best time to start HRT is when the hormones are just starting to decline, when you're perimenopausal. And so then, because if you get all the way to the bottom, coming back up is it's a different management. Whereas if we catch it nearer the top, then it's going to be an easier ride. It's less of the roller coaster ride. So that advice totally flawed. And yet it's a professional, and so you take them at the word.
Yeah, well, we have to, don't we? And I think the other thing that I've discovered on this journey, which I think is really, really important, is that your gut health does decline as you get older. It just does. And if your gut health is poor, even if they then give you HRT, it's not going to have a huge effect, because you need to have all of those nutrients there to allow your hormones to work correctly. And so you can't just fling HRT into the there's a fly buzzing around.
I saw it then.
Not just fling HRT or any other hormones into it. You've got to make sure that the gut health is working as optimally as it can at your age. And so for me, it wasn't until I'd increased my vitamin D, my vitamin C, and my omegas. So vitamin D, vitamin C, and omegas, they were some of the three ones that I had to get up before I could even start to utilize the hormones I was putting into my body properly. And I think that's a really interesting thing as well. So,
well, I mean, are you talking a pill or a patch?
For hormones, a patch.
Okay, patch. So it's going straight into your bloodstream.
Yeah. But there's quite a few interesting podcasts out there now that talk about gut health and menopause. And we do all go hormones. And that's right, we are all suffering from hormones. But it's the gut health that has to be better for us to be able to utilize the hormones now. Now, I've listened to quite a few of them, and I can't remember all the science behind it. But there's some really interesting ones out there if anybody is interested in listening a bit more to that. But I think what I took from that is, it's like everything we say again and again and again. We have to look after our health. And so we have to look after our gut health. And that means eating well, you know, just like we always say, eating the colours of the rainbow. Sometimes as you get older, you start to get more gluten intolerant, don't you? And things like that that you never were when you were young.
Yeah, well, this is, I mean, the gut, the motility of the gut slows, so that the contractility, nothing's going through quite as, you know, in the way that it was. The acidity of the gut changes, so that the digestive processes are not as efficient. So there are lots of changes that occur. And so even when we put the best things into us, we can still end up being slightly deficient because of this lack of poor absorption, or, you know, whatever it is. So you're quite right that supplementation is something that perhaps, you know, more, we need to consider more than we might previously have done. And I know, I mean, that there's, but again, that's not really my field of expertise. I know that's, you know, like you're saying, we're fit, we've exercised. You had your parasite issue, and I've got irritable bowel syndrome, which I've had since I was in my 20s. And so, you know, invariably, I'm quite sure my absorption has never been all that it could be, you know. So when you take those things together hand in hand with the changes in the hormones, you know, it kind of starts to become a bit cumulative, doesn't it, really?
It does, and I think in some ways that's why it's good to have a thorough blood test that you don't get at the GP, you know, that gives you all your levels, and you can see where you're off the wall, you know, where you're not absorbing anything, where you're not getting any. I mean, my vitamin C was non-existent, which is bizarre because I had a lot of food with vitamin C, but because of the gut health issues, I wasn't absorbing it.
Yeah.
So it's really important to see where you are deficient in these things to help you, because it's not just the hormones. The hormones are vital, of course they are, but it isn't just the hormones, it's the gut health too. And on top of that, I would even put, you know, with the menopause, it's your exercise too. You know, all of those things go hand in hand in hand, and your stress levels.
Oh yeah, well, so I mean, so this is the thing, we were talking about this a bit after last week's podcast, weren't we? The two halves of the equation, A plus B equals C, you know, or how do we get that balance? How do we achieve the balance? So replacing the hormones is really still only half of the story, or part of the story. And that's, you know, with replacing the hormones, you prevent the bone loss. But still, it's going to be the age-related decline. You know, that happens to men as well. So it's not just about the estrogen story, the bone in particular. So, you know, so that's still managing half of the equation. You can't think that taking the estrogen and progesterone even is a solution in itself, because it isn't.
No, it isn't.
It's still only part of the story. And so the lifestyle management still is just such a huge part of the story. The exercise, the load bearing, the resistance, the strengthening, and then the mind body stuff. Because although, like I said to you, I am a much crazier version of myself than I used to be. The stuff that really, really helps me deal with this situation is meditation and all the mind body work. So,
and it has a massive effect, doesn't it? And because I think one of the big things about menopause that a lot of people have said to me as well is the putting on of weight.
Oh yeah,
you know, that is part of it as well, isn't it? And it is really tough not to put on weight when you're going through the menopause and when you're menopausal, you know, and it is just hard. It's harder for women than it is for men, and we all know that. And we know that if we live with men, because they eat twice as much as we do and don't seem to put on any weight at all. But it's this thing, isn't it? It's this abdominal fat that we put on. But that does have to do with cortisol as well, doesn't it?
That's it. And so think about the not sleeping piece of the puzzle, because you know, not sleeping is part of one of those menopausal symptoms. And if you're having that, and going through the menopause, then you're doubly likely, aren't you? Because the cortisol levels are raised, you're doubly likely to be laying the fat on, particularly, as you say, around the middle. So sleep is, we've said it before, we're saying it again, so important to get that quality of sleep, undisrupted, undisturbed, you know, a good 7-8 hours if you can.
Which is quite hard to get, isn't it? It's quite hard to get, I think. You
Well,
know,
it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder when you're menopausal.
it's a lot harder. But it's vital, isn't it? And I think you know, if you're interested in wanting to lose weight when you're menopausal, it's not just as simple as going on a diet. That isn't going to work long term at all. I think you have to look at the type of exercise you're doing as well, and it's like you were saying before, it's resistance. You know, it's resistance work, because that does burn fat rather than muscle, doesn't it? And it builds the muscle. The more muscle we have, the more fat we can then burn. So I think you have to look very carefully if that's your goal as a menopausal woman, because doing a lot of running or jogging, aerobic type exercise, it's not going to cut it. It just isn't going to cut it, is it?
Yeah. Well, so there's lots of different evidence around this, but you know, in my own personal experience, lots of aerobic exercise just drives my appetite. I'm ravenous, you know.
Yeah.
So if that's you know, and then the other thing is you start to have that silly conversation, which is, well, I've burnt this many calories, so now I can eat this many calories. So, you know, when you think of it as particularly the aerobic exercise as a means to managing the weight, then I think it becomes a vicious cycle, really.
It does become a vicious cycle, and I think it's a dangerous one, because we've all done in the past where you think, oh, you know, I've gone on a run and I've burned, I don't know, let's say 500 calories, 800 calories, therefore I could eat them. But we often say all calories aren't the same. And when we do a lot of aerobic exercise, we burn more fat than we do muscle. No, wrong way round. We burn more muscle than we do fat. And that's why it's not a great exercise to do for weight loss.
Well, it's a different metabolic process. It's a different cellular process.
Yeah.
So it reliant on different systems to release the energy. But those are the energy systems that are driven by carbohydrates. So then you start to crave carbohydrates, because you need to replace the glycogen in the cells by taking in carbohydrates. So it just does become this kind of a vicious roundabout circle. And, you know, and the thing is, I know this because for the most of my life, I was running 6 days a week.
Yeah, well, I used to be a big runner too. We both.
Yeah, exactly. And so I know for a fact that I would run and end up almost back where I began by the time I'd had my breakfast.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, that's it, and that you know, and I think that's why the resistance training is so good when we get to this age.
Yeah, strength training. Be strong. Be fit. Be cardiovascularly fit. But do that with walking or cycling or swimming. Even swimming doesn't build your bones, but it's still cardiovascular exercise. And so, you know, do those kinds of things to be cardiovascularly fit, rather than thinking of running to lose weight. Think of exercise as a way of getting you fitter, stronger, healthier, instead of losing weight. And think of nutrition as something that helps us to manage our weight. And it's, again, we're back to those two sides of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what you have to think about. And that's what we have to focus on when we go through the menopause, more so than ever before, because we've got all those things working against us now. So we have to be more vigilant, you know, on that sort of thing. We have to take more care of our bodies so that we go into old age being fit and strong, mobile and flexible. You know, that has to be the goal, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, we're fortunate to be healthy, fundamentally healthy. I mean, I dread to think how I would feel if I wasn't fundamentally healthy, as you know, going through all of this.
Yeah.
I am very grateful that fundamentally I'm healthy at the end of the day, and that it's a choice. I have the choice. Not everybody has the choice. We have to acknowledge that, do they? You know. But for those of us that do have that choice, then then we should, you know, we should, I shouldn't say should, but we should embrace those opportunities that present themselves to us to live this better life longer.
Yeah. That's it, because there's no point living a longer life if we're in this terrible state. You know, there's only point really living a long life if you're going to be
able to enjoy it.
And that, for me, that's what health and fitness is all about. It's about doing the stuff that I love, which happens to be, you know, walking and trekking and cycling, but it's playing with my grandkids as well. It's getting down on the floor and playing with them. I mean, wouldn't it be awful if you didn't have the flexibility to get down onto the ground with your grandkids?
Yeah.
And just play with them. I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Not to be able to sit here, look at me, I'm going to show you now, right?
Oh, yes. Well done.
Yeah, so this is comfortable to sit in this fashion. You know, it's comfortable, and it's only comfortable because we practice. It's not comfortable because naturally I'm designed this way, but
I mean, that's true. It's about doing things, practicing again and again and again, and eventually we will get there.
We'll get there together.
And we'll get there with all of you lot helping you through it too, because we're all in the same boat. And some of you have gone through the menopause brilliantly. You know, if I look around in class, and some of you are so fit and so flexible and so healthy, and it's just brilliant that everybody has embraced their health and been on this journey with us, isn't it, for so many years.
Yeah, it's great. We love it.
We do. So I think on that note, we shall wind up for this week. So I know it's not been much information for the men out there, but maybe just a little bit of TLC to the women in your life who are going through this menopause. I think that's probably the best advice that we can give.
Well, I know you winded it up, but I have told both my sons this whole story in the greatest of detail, because I want them to be fabulous husbands.
Yes, that is wonderful. And they should know, and they need to know about it.
And maybe if one day the doctors, I mean, they're not going to be doctors, my boys, but, you know, tell your sons, because maybe one day they'll be a doctor and they can help women who are going through this life-changing.
And also they can just support the women in their life a bit more. You know, I think it's an important thing. Let's all talk about it a bit more. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Yes, definitely that.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all, everybody, and we shall be back soon.
Yeah.
Bye for now.